Hi everyone, delonewolf here and welcome back to EVE Talk, your weekly look at the market in EVE Online. And as always, we'll start with a little bit of news. And first of all, CCP came out with the economic numbers for April. Interestingly enough, they came out Friday, very late, so I haven't had the time to look at them just yet, but they should be pretty interesting because of course we have the whole industry changes that happened in the month of April, which just before the changes hit, in all likeliness, a very big rush on industry itself, and then potentially a serious decline as well when the patch actually hits it. So that should be pretty interesting. Definitely gonna take a look at that as soon as possible. Next up, we've got the EVE Academy that has been launched. So this is like a new resource that'll hopefully help newer players find their way into EVE Online a little bit more easily. I think anything helps on that front. EVE Online is an 18-year-old game at this point. It doesn't look it. Doesn't look a day over a year old, but honestly, it is, of course, one of the most complex games out there. It is a sandbox, and I do think that helping newer players find their way in EVE Online, and especially giving them a sense that what they do can actually matter in the game as well. And in fact, it does. This is such a unique aspect to EVE Online that almost anything you do in the game really impacts the entire game. That's the beauty of it, and I think that's a big part of potentially motivating newer players to finding their way in EVE Online. And then finally, CSM season is beginning. The new candidates have been announced. I myself, am not so much of a CSM fanatic. I don't really get involved into that too much, but it is a very unique thing that CCP does together with some very select players. And I myself do have 110% respect for all of the effort and time that those players and CCP actually puts into the CSM. It is like a second job, and that is mainly the reason why I say that's not for me, just because of the sheer amount of time and effort required to become a CSM member. So big respect to those players that are taking that jump, and I hope it's going to be interesting and that you guys can of course keep EVE Online a nice place to play, and that you can keep CCP from making big mistakes. As always, we'll also take a quick look at the New Eden store. If I'm not mistaken, the 18 plex for a skin stuff is over. So we do have some new skins apparently here called Ultraviolence Vortex skins. Very interesting. Very noticeable graphic that doesn't translate in the same way on every single hull. This is definitely a unique one, I would say. Looks pretty interesting. And other than that, I'm not noticing anything too special. And then on the surfaces front, nothing special here either. All right, well, that is it for the introduction. Let's get started with some plex and stuff. So I should really open up the market tab, quick bar, and there's a hint at the extra materials, but plex and stuff coming in at 335. Like that. So let's get started right here with plex, and you can see our sideways movement is continuing. Very big indication to me that the market is sort of hesitating. Which way do we want to go from here? Is that the data points for the daily averages are basically all over the place, a little bit above, a little bit below that 5-day moving average that has really started that sideways movement just below 2.4 million ISK. In JITA itself, we are selling for almost 2.5 million. Let's disregard the 250 sell order at 2425, and then buyers are coming in a little bit above 0.3 million ISK. When it comes to the player-owned trade hubs, we do go down to 4.5 million. And then for the buyers, a bit of pressure there, a slight bit of pressure from the Tranquility Trading Tower, but not that much. So definitely a little bit of domination here, right? What we usually see is that JITA 4.4 does play ball with the Tranquility Trading Tower here, right? Top sell orders definitely go down, well, I would say a substantial amount, only in the Tranquility Trading Tower. And then the buyers as well, the cheapest buyers being dominated right here. All, of course, with a one jump range, so that that trade can be picked up in JITA as well. but can effectively be done within the Tranquility Trading Tower. So on hesitations, it is pretty obvious that one of the two, that the Tranquility Trading Tower starts to dominate the active trade right there. Volumes down a little bit as well in the last couple of days. For the multiple pilot train certificate, we actually have a move up that is probably stalling at the 1.25 billion mark. It does, of course, mean 30 days training time for a character, and it's actually at 1.2 billion for the sellers and 1.15 billion for the buyers as well. Very narrow margin that must have closed substantially. So I think here, if the chart is going to reflect the current data points, also dominated again by the Tranquility Trading Tower, we're actually going to, in all likeliness, start to see that 20-day moving average I'd pull back a little bit and then move sideways, or over a longer period of time. If we're in this situation, then yeah, it's just going to be a continuation of right here around the 1.2 billion average price range at the moment. Volumes very clearly down a little bit as well. So first read for me on this is that the market seems to be in a little bit of a holding pattern. Not sure what to do right now. I think they're definitely waiting also for these those keys for the NULSIC banks to come to the game, so that they can see what kind of a mechanic that is, what kind of steady inflation, or do we expect like big jumps, big gulps of ISK to make their way into the economy. And so at the moment, yeah, there's a little bit of hesitation which way to go. The skill extractors should mirror that pretty closely, and yeah, they do. You can see here as well, last week or so, a sideways movement above 280 million, probably the 285 mark if I'm looking at this chart here. And again, some daily averages above and some daily averages below that, creating this sideways move. And also last 3 days or so, we are seeing lower volumes as well, although not by that much. It's 275 million for the sellers and 267 million for the buyers. So again, very narrow margin in this period of hesitation. And once again, right, front page Tranquility Trading Tower, and then here Tranquility Trading Tower up to the 266. So definitely a little bit of domination in the plex category at the moment of trade being done in the trading tower. Then we have our injectors. With that hesitation, I don't think it's good news, and it is not. Here are the large scale injectors diving below 600 million for the first time. So round numbers do tend to be something that has a little bit of a psychological resistance behind it. And so you can see here clearly, right, like a jump here from 630, another jump back from 630, but then we went to 600 million ISK, and now we are down below the 600 million ISK mark. And so be careful, because this could only be the start, and this is where I think the expression comes from of be careful, don't catch a falling knife. And so if you thought that this bounce was actually the start of a recovery and that this is an actual bottom, turns out that you were wrong. And yeah, this is just a little dead cat bounce, another one as we continue to slowly edge down on the large scale injectors. We're talking 599 for the first seller, 602 for most, but here we have a much bigger margin of 574 million for the buyers. So the demand is definitely only there at a much lower price than those sell prices, and that is creating all of that pressure and also driving these average prices below 600 million. And then this of course is bad news, right? They're seeing this chart, so they're saying, a lot of sellers with less patience are going, I have to go below 600 million if I want my sale to actually stick. And so you start to see this here, 9 of them as well at 599. Could be a little bit of desperate dumping, because this is a 1-year low point. Small scale extractors, I don't think that they can counter the tendency there. Then the one difference is it's not a 1-year low point just yet. So at this point here, we're basically back at that low point. We haven't broken through that just yet. And we're talking 123 million for the sellers and 115 million for the buyers. Pressure mounting, I'd say, yeah, for front page here, start at 125 and we go down to 123 in a matter of, well, maybe 3-4 days of sell orders, and definitely the last day as well, continuing to put a decent chunk of pressure. And those buyers, 115, it's not as big a margin as what I would have expected, but perhaps all of this down to the 112 or even, 112 range in all likeliness could get filled up quite quickly. If you look here, 31, 6, another 10, another 20, another 20. Here it's 1, 2, 4, 9. You know, fill those orders, and this guy is then probably going to be pretty happy. And then you're at the 112 mark. So we are bound to see more pressure at the moment in these regular skill injectors. But then let's take a look at the daily alpha injectors. All right, average, right? 40 million, a decent landing spot in my opinion. And then daily averages trending down. So the pressure is definitely existing here. We're talking 40 million for the sellers, 36 million for the buyers, where we are talking a first one that's coming in below 40 million. So again, same danger, I would say. Perhaps around the anniversary, CCP has been pretty generous with skill points, and this may have spooked the market a little bit, saying why would anyone be buying injectors right now? It's going to take a couple of months probably before that hunger comes back or a big CCP announcement, and at the moment we are going down in price. And this is really, I would say, your only reasoning that I could see to jump in right now. If you look at this large scale injector market, where, you know, below 650 looked like a bottom, 630 looked like a bottom twice, 600 looked like a bottom again, and we're still just continuing that 1 year downtrend. But if you think that there's like a big revolution coming with a CCP announcement that could entail new skill books, a lot of skills for some core stuff to do, then of course you can speculate on this starting to be a bottom and a nice place to jump in. But I would personally be rather careful of that. Right at the moment, the trend has clearly been try to get new players into the game, be very generous with skill points to try and close that gap between new players and veteran players. If all of a sudden CCP puts in months, maybe years of training time to do a certain aspect of the game, that's probably not in line with what we're seeing at the moment, but you never know, of course. And then finally, we still have the hypercores that are doing maybe a little bit of a counter move, although you can see that that 20-day moving average is actually pretty flat over the last 2 to 3 weeks here at this point. So maybe more of a wavy pattern around the holding place for the average prices here. 255,000 for the sellers, 243 for the buyers. Definitely at the low end of this 1 year range, and a gauge that I think can still hold up longer term for potentially inflation, but it also depends a little bit on, you know, Hypernet relay stuff like special events and I would say holidays and things like that. Anniversaries of big alliances could definitely have an impact, in my opinion, on the hypercores as well, where all of a sudden there's a reason to like do a lot of giveaway type things in game. That could definitely drive this market as well. It is a niche thing that is not necessarily as good a gauge for inflation deflation as Plex itself, of course. So next up, we've got the minerals coming in at 13 minutes. This one could be pretty interesting. If you follow the other videos that I make, then you know that I've been going back to some mining. I'm mining at the moment in the Orca, compressing that a lot, and then I'm actually investing this in buying some of the higher end minerals in order to try and find some PPCs that actually have positive numbers on them. And it's interesting to see actually what's happening there. Some items are not doing too well, and titanium has just broken straight through the 5-ISK barrier. So here, the thing that you may have feared, or that I at least speculated would happen, is that titanium is going to try and find a new balance price, because the need for titanium after the industry patch is a lot lower than it was before. And so now we do have this very serious pullback, and at the moment we're down to the 4.5 ISK range on the chart. It's actually at the moment, if you then go to the GTA itself for the sellers, 470 pretty much for the sellers, 450 for the buyers. buyers, pretty narrow margin, but clearly the pressure is here with sellers coming in with 250 million, again, a couple hundred million here again. It's just more supply than is needed, and this is normal, right? If all of a sudden across the board in Tech 1 industry you need a lot less titanium, especially for the bigger stuff, than high-sec miners that just have titanium as kind of a side part of their business, no matter what, right? I don't always just pick out the plagio class asteroids, sometimes just take the 5 closest ones. Is there a bit of feldspar in there? That's fine. Bring it all in. That's how I tend to mine. And so the oversupply situation is here and was not unexpected. The real question is, of course, is there now a little bit of a drought with players, not needing to build lots of battleships and are not in a rush to build carriers and super carriers? Maybe some of the bigger transport ships as well. And is this causing an overreaction on the price? That is maybe the one thing that that we could wonder about. Volume wise, this is back to a pretty regular volume, I would say. So it's going to be interesting to see if this holds up. If the volumes do hold up, then I do think this may turn out to be a little bit of an overreaction. But we have to wait and see. I don't have the actual answers on that myself. But for now, titanium definitely not what you want to focus on when you're mining in high-sec. Next up, we've got pyrite that is defending 20 ISK, or trying to at least, so difficult to ask, but for now it has been holding 21.57 in fact for the sellers, 20 ISK for the first couple of buyers. This is definitely okay considering the titanium chart, maintaining the margin that we had gained with the resource changes right here is quite important, and yeah, that means that pyrite is definitely still in an okay spot at the moment for around 20, and as we said, sellers are a decent chunk above that as well. So these average prices do indicate that a decent amount of miners are like impatient and selling to these buyers as well and slowly pushing them below 20. That's the danger, right? If that really starts to happen, you can see half a dozen sell orders and you're starting to get into the 19 range. It's going to put pressure on these buyers, and then if we go substantially below 19 on the average prices, that's going to probably switch the market around and we may then move down. So for now we're holding, but how long, that's difficult to say. Then we've got the Mexalon market that is basically trying to make a landing at around 75. Not entirely unexpected either, back to a historical normal, I would say, for Mexalon. And in Jita, the sell price are still at 87 ISK, buyers coming in at 78 ISK. Volume wise, this is very reasonable, right? 10-20 million at the high end, couple million as the average sell order. And this is still a good price for Mexalon, I would say, and your focus in high-sec for sure. But the golden days of 150, 125, those are over with the new industry changes, and then the 200 ISK right at the peak of demand due to the rush on industry right before the changes. Those are unfortunately over, but that same question can be asked here again. This is a very substantial pullback in a short amount of time, and is this because, well, all of this here, right, has meant a lot of extra production all of a sudden to still use the old BPCs, and as a result, could we be overreacting here? Could demand be dropping off to a point that's too low, basically, for what we can expect longer term to be needed in the economy? It's a possibility, and I must say I'm trying to make some stuff, right? Because with this pullback, generally, I think that the margins could be okay if you produce the right stuff. At the moment, what I'm looking for is like modules seem to be doing okay, munitions probably as well. I need to move some BPOs actually to Yona from munitions in order to get a better view of that. Ships, terrible, especially the smaller ships that have basically really become easy to make. But that's the real question. Is the demand going to pick up, and then we could be looking at higher prices later down the line? So I'm buying some minerals in order to produce stuff at the moment. Everything else goes into compressed ore, and I'm storing that for later down the line, where hopefully I can get a better price. Next up, we've got the low-sec ones. Here is Isogen actually making its way back to 50 ISK. That's actually an impressive move, considering the pressure that we're seeing in the high-sec ones. That is not bad. We're talking 50 pretty much for the sellers, 48 ISK for the buyers. And you can see now that at 54, there's an order with like almost 500 million units. That's definitely something that's going to keep the price in check at around here on the chart. But everything else, that starts to look a little bit better, right? 6 million, 14 million, much more in line with Mexilon numbers, with a regular progression in volumes of a mineral that is meant to be a little bit harder to get. And so some upwards pressure counter to everything else in Isogen. I'm still holding on to my theory. There's still stocks out there that are making it hard for the price to really break out, but the upward potential is still there, because if you imagine 60 million gone, this 435 million gone, which I can't imagine is that easy to mine and bring to the market at the moment, you're looking at an entirely different picture that could very easily go to higher prices, because demand is going to outstrip active supply, in my opinion. Next up, we've got Noxium that is telling that same story, in my opinion, without those big reserves. So Noxium has the big boost that went up to above 2000 ISK in the month of April, which is of course again that rush in industry. It has a pullback from that, but still above the entire level before the industry rush, the patch announcement, and we're still well above 1500 ISK for Noxium. In fact, we're selling at 1640, buyers are at 1568, so this is very expensive. And look at the volumes here. Most sell orders well below 1 million units, 3 million, 3.5 million. Those are the biggest orders. And so again, if you look at that regular progression, 20 million at the high end for Mexilon, 10 million at the high end for Isogen, 3 million at the high end for Noxium. Well, Mexilon is going for 86, Isogen for 50, and then Noxium for 1600. Which one of these is not in line just yet with the situation? Obviously, it's Isogen, because of a 60 million here, a 435 here, those stocks. But we are going to chew through these, I think. And so Isogen is definitely in a very interesting spot, I think, potentially for speculators. And then we get our null-sec minerals. Here is Zydrine, that has known a big pullback as well. In fact, a very early pullback, and is now finally stabilizing well below 1000 ISK. 961 for the sellers, 850 for the buyers. This to me is also something that makes me actually decently hopeful for higher prices for Isogen. It's that Zydrine is below Noxium, right? Null-sec can outproduce low-sec apparently quite easily, because this stuff should be even harder to get per cubic meter than Noxium. And so this one being below 1000 ISK is good news for industry. So this is something, for instance, that I buy as well. Try to put up a buy order, try to grab some Zydrine. And yeah, we're stalling our descent here. We're probably finding our new average point, and this does bring it a lot more in line with where Megasite has been for most of the year, around 600 ISK here, 593 now for the sellers and 571 for the buyers, so a little bit below 600 ISK, but still a reasonable price if we look at this 1 year chart. And if we look at everything else, right, a little bit lower demand because of slowdown in activity with the industry changes is what has pushed us below 600 ISK. But it's not like the bottom is dropping out like for titanium at the moment. So this looks in line with what we can expect longer term. I think Megasite and Zydrine was basically then potentially in a little bit of a speculative bubble when we went to 1500 and above, and here 2000 at the height of things. But looks like Yeah, Nullsec has come on top of their game and has been able to drive the prices down for their types of minerals. Then there is this one exception, of course, as Morphite is going back up in price, back to 75,000 X. So they haven't been able to squash demand with supply for Morphite. And in fact, we're looking at 85,000 X for the sellers and 69,000 for the buyers. Still extremely, extremely expensive, but of course tied to the Tech 2 economy. And is it now also needed in some of the Tech 1? Well, it looks like there's some excavator drones. Gonna take a quick look and see if we can spot something. So there's definitely some faction stuff, implant stuff as well. And has anything, it's needed in so much and supplies are so low. I would personally say if you look at this entire picture and at one point CCP wants to introduce maybe a new type of resource activity, then I wouldn't be surprised if Morphite could be one of those that would all of a sudden find an alternative way of being introduced into the game, bring it a little bit more in line with just the sheer amount of stuff that it's needed in compared to like the one single route and place where you can get it basically at the moment. Let's move on to PI. It's coming in at 25.5. Like that, and then let's take a look at this. So broadcast nodes, advanced PI, right? Also, I think needed in some of the capitals and super capitals, able to defend that price range quite well. Very nice recovery basically over the last 6 months or so. We're talking 1.7, almost 1.8 million for the sellers, 1.5 for the buyers. I think this is gonna be like the trend, right? CCP has introduced a little bit of extra demand, and that has been very good for the price of these advanced PI materials that were really under pressure here, down to less than a million at the start of the year, which was its bottom. 75% gain over 6 months. Definitely not that bad for those that invested. And I have a couple of small holdings, in fact, of these broadcast nodes still at the ready. I think a 100 and a 300 million investment or something like that. That should definitely be put on the market at this point. But for the refined PI materials, like the construction blocks, these are clearly still struggling well below average at the moment. So here demand has not gone up all of a sudden in any real substantial ways. 7,500 for the first seller, it's 30,000 units. We could ignore it and move it to 8K, but honestly, that does show this oversupply cycle that we're clearly in. 7,154 for the buyers. That is keeping us in this very low range for a good that normally goes well above 10,000 ISK. Consumer electronics basically confirming that trend. I think 12.5 for consumer electronics is a more normal price. 7,500 on the chart. 7,800 for the seller, 7,300 for the buyer. So this again, narrower margin, but at a super low range. And then for the fuels, we may have a slightly different picture because there are some extra fuel blocks needed in the new industry changes as well. And so here you can see a bit of a recovery, but also not a full recovery, because 10,000 is normal for coolants, historically speaking, at least from my perspective. 8.5 for the sellers, 7.7 for the buyers. That is definitely still below the normal regular prices, but we do see a little bit of recovery. And so this is pretty clearly increased demand due to the industry changes that have helped these prices from recovering a little bit, albeit not to their former glory, you could say. Cryoprotectant solutions, all right, dipping well below 100,000, so this one could start to be interesting. Yep, 98,000 for the sellers, 88.7 for the buyers. So cryoprotectant solutions with this pattern, right, starting here with a nice bump, October bump as well, tied to implant productions, and right now you're buying this below 90,000 ISK. I would say potentially a good time to be looking into investing in these, trying to grab some of the cheaper cryoprotectant solutions that you can get. It is a gamble because you are gambling on CCP coming out with new implants for this to pay off, but you can clearly see that the potential payoff does exist. Over the last year we've had 1, 2, 3 very nice opportunities that if you can buy for 90k is a 30% increase, and this is a little bit higher than that, and at 140, 90k, 50, that's practically a 50% increase in price. So you know, something that I'll probably do, albeit, and I always say this, in very small amounts. I'm not someone that's going to gamble huge amounts of ISK in even in the EVE market. Enriched uranium tied to fuels, same pattern as coolants, bit of a comeback, but this is substantially harder to make than coolants, and I would say that 12.5 is a more normal price for enriched uranium. 9,600 for the sellers, 8.8 for the buyers, so recovered, but clearly still below average or below the normal prices. Integrity response drones are selling for 1.8, buyers coming in at 1.7. So again, that demand has picked up, but is not really able to drive prices to stratospheric numbers or anything like that just yet. The market is pretty good, I think, at you know, incorporating the extra needs for PI at the moment, which is normal. Of course, we're coming from an oversupply situation, so increased demand can very easily be met. Don't expect any massive breakouts at the moment, I would say. Mechanical parts tied to fuels, another one that's easy to produce on barren planets, 10k, definitely a normal price range at the moment, 20% below that, 8.2 for the sellers, 7.6 for the buyers. Nanites, which is, you know, tied to repair pace and things like that. Definitely also a bit of pressure at the tail end. Are we below 5k for the sellers? No, 5,100 for one, 5.2 for most, 4.8 for the buyers. And here again, right, this is supply, this is demand in JITA and the Tranquility Trading Tower. So we're massively oversupplied at the moment, which means that this could also be an opportunity for you to buy nanas below 5,000 ISK on, you know, a little bit of changes. Wasn't there? Let's take a look at that. Ooh, genetic structure repair blueprint. Oh, that's for the new stuff. Interesting. Yeah, for me, this feels like kind of risky. Nano factories, PI material that hasn't done that well, but it's still selling for almost 900,000 ISK, buyers at 730. Bit more margin on this one. I'd say it's recovered a little bit, but not that much. Organic mortar applicator, same thing, right? A little bit below 900,000, 850 for the sellers, 800,000 for the buyers. Better margin, so it looks a little bit better on the chart. But I think we used to be well above 1 million on average, so this one recovered, but again, not fully. Recursive computing module, a couple of bad data points making the chart weird. 1.2 million for the sellers and 1.1 for the buyers. Same story. Robotics for fuels, this is bad news. Data points at the moment below 60,000 ISK for average, 61 for the sellers and 57,000 for the buyers. Extremely cheap and tied to fuels. So robotics counter to coolants, counter to where are the enriched uranium and mechanical parts, has not been able to make any recovery on the increased demand for fuel blocks. This is just down the toilet, you could say, 40% below a normal average price at 60k, and yeah, we're looking to go even lower apparently for these buyers. Self-harmonizing power cores able to defend 175, so that's that recovery again. Yeah, 175 for the sellers, 1.4 million for the buyers. Sterile conduits actually doing well here, getting back to its 1-year high point, so recovering as well, 1.26 million, 1.15 for the buyers. Yukomi superconductors tied to fuels here, making its way back to 75k, which is unfortunate, right? If you're looking to invest in this one, I would love to be able to grab this below 50k. It's just never materializing. 75 for the sellers and 65 for the buyers. This again here with these bumps is tied to implants and then wetware mainframes. Actually, first one to do a little bit of a pullback after reaching 1.75 million, 1.8 probably. We're back down to 1.5 for the sellers, 1.3 for the buyers. And so this is the pattern that you should probably expect or be ready for when it comes to advanced PI materials and fuels as well. Expect supply to be able to overtake us rather than a supply shortage all of a sudden. And so we'll either see a stability, I would say, or a pullback in price. I would not expect a breakout to 1-year high points or anything like that. Next up, we've got advanced moon materials coming in at 33.30. So let's see if things are changing here so far, right? It's been very expensive. So let's start as always with the carbide-like numbers, and yeah, full recovery back to 1-year high point for crystalline carbonate for Galente production, back to 226 for the sellers, to 18 for the buyers. Look at that, those buyers super aggressive here, a couple of them. So this does not look to be over. Very, very expensive 1-year high point for crystalline carbonate. Then we've got the Caldari ones, which is titanium carbide, that hasn't fully recovered, but must also be said 350 is going to be pretty tricky to beat. But we are pulling back up here again towards 300, to 83 is for the sellers, to 71 for the buyers. Again, very expensive on this 1-year chart. Then we've got for Minmatar Fernite carbide, breakout to 1-year high point as well. Yep, this market is really finding its footing at these higher prices. It's been very bumpy and speculative, but yeah, the margins, they're really starting to cement themselves. I think 230 for the sellers, 205 for the buyers, and this tends to happen when supplies dry out in Jita. Very expensive again. And then for Amar, do we have a breakout here? No, Amar a little bit more conservative, a little bit more stable actually across the board, right? Our read, my read at least when it comes to advanced PI materials, is that the Amar section has always been a lot more stable, and the Caldari one has been the most volatile. So we're above 200, we're still pretty expensive at 210, 198 for the buyers, very narrow margin, but yeah, slightly better supplied here apparently, and able to maintain that price, not a high point like in all of the others. Does this finally start to translate in the meta materials? Let's take a look at that. Photonic meta materials for Galente. No, still, I mean, it did so like 10 days ago, right? Here it looked like we could break out, but we're very easily getting back to 13,000 for the sellers and 12,000 for the buyers, back at, you know, a very doable range. Doesn't feel like it's completely crazy. Then we've got the non-linears for Caldari. Definitely a big step up in price, but I would say it's not completely crazy either. 24,000 for the sellers, 23,000 for the buyers. Then for Minmatar, where the hell are those? There we go. Plasmonic metamaterials, flat at 20k. So 22.6 for the sellers, 19,000 for the buyers. A lot less to say here. And then terahertz metamaterials for Amar, flat at 17.5. 17.8 for the first seller, 17.7 for the buyer. That's a narrow margin. That's stability for Amar. It's really very, very noticeable. And apparently the metamaterials are able to maintain a decent price range and maintain decent supplies, which is probably what's helping keeping these a little bit more stable. So yeah, that's the situation. It's really in the carbides that there's volatility, that there's very high prices, and the metamaterials are doing okay. And then the other advanced PI materials, my expectation is here that we'll be struggling. Fermionic condensates down substantially here, and basically trying to pull back up from 60,000 disc, which is a pretty low point. 67 for the seller, 63,000 for the buyers. Yeah, that's not too hot. Ferrogel also, right? We had some nice triple spikes back up to 40,000 disc, and we already pulled back down to 33 for the sellers, 33 for the buyers. So it's settling away from the bottoms, but it's clearly not doing the same as the carbides or even the metamaterials so far. Fullerite's trying to build on a third wave. So here again a double top back at 1250, and then supply just squashed that back well below 1,000 disc, and we're struggling to recover because sellers keep coming in below 1,000, buyers at 930, 914 for most. So there's a bit of a recovery here again, but a full recovery, no, that doesn't seem to be in the books. Hypersynaptic fibers very violently going up to 13,000 discs, so a little bit of volatility does start to make its way in here, but my fear is that we're already down to 11k for the sellers, 10,740 for the buyers, but we don't need that much to be back below 10,000 disc for the buyers, and you know, supply wise this will probably just bring it right back down. That's my opinion on that. I could be wrong, but generally, right, these other advanced boom materials, they've been trying, and on some occasions, right, they have been having these types of spikes, but none of them have been able to maintain those gains. So this is really something, if you're trading in this, I would say you have to be very, very much on the ball. Watch this every single day. Right now, hypersynaptic fibers, sell, sell, sell. Try to get that better price right now, because a week from now, it'll probably be too late. Nano transistors, again, right, breakout here, but we're right back well below 5,000 disk here, 4.5 in fact for the sellers, 4.4 for the buyers. Phenolic composites, and the last one I think is an exception that has been able to maintain some gains, I think due to the industry changes, but phenolic composites at the moment still trying to stay above 75, but yeah, above 2K, it's just not gonna stay there. 1840 for this one, and the ceramic fibers, those do have like that higher trade range around the 500 disk at the moment, but even that is starting to show signs of pressures. 465 for the sellers, 446 for the buyers. Still better than the entire first part of the chart, but how long can it last? Well, we will see. But for all the others, you can clearly see that all of that upwards volatility gets plugged very quickly, and that it's really struggling to do more of these breakouts at the moment. Next up, Tech 2 ships coming in at 40 minutes. Like that. First, I'll take a quick drink. There we go, and let's get into it. Here is the basilisk that is finally dropping off after a month of basically high points above 250 and even 280 million ISK. We have our first pullback, but we have seen in the advanced move materials, production costs are bound to be up again as the titanium carbide is moving back up and definitely nowhere near the previous ranges. So the basilisk, let's take actually a quick look at this one. 234 million for the sellers, 204 for the buyers. If this has any more momentum, unfortunately in the last couple of days you can see that we are hesitating, and here average price at 210. I think we're basically 3-4 days too late. We could have probably, let's see here, 89, 16 hours, 89, 89. Yeah, we could have probably bought for 200 million, maybe just below 200 million 4 or 5 days ago. But unfortunately, we are just too late for that one. And I honestly think, right, if you could have bought below 200 million, considering production costs here, that would have been a very nice jumping point for the basilisk. You can still take the gamma, right? 205 is not that bad, but it's going to be a lot harder now that we're starting to hesitate and move up in the average prices to actually get that chip sold to you at that price. Next up here we get the Cerberus, still holding on to all of its gains pretty much, staying just below 300 million on the chart. It's 284 for the sellers, 267 for the buyers. There is some supply coming in, but there is definitely super strong demand here as well. This again just again confirms to me the read that if you could have bought for 200 million or below, you're looking at a golden trade there. 205 could still be pretty good, but yeah, if you manage to grab it, let me know, because that's gonna be very tricky to do. Then we've got the Guardian flat at 230. Amar unfortunately really lacking in volatility for active trading. 231 for the sellers, 206 for the buyers. To get this average price, it's basically just the sellers, and that's it. There's too little action, speculation happening here. Then we've got the Hound also decreasing in volatility. The range is all right, almost 30, and at the downside on 25. So we're talking 30 million for the sellers at the moment, 20 for the buyers. And I actually have oops, I should really move that to the holdings, because these have triggered. So including taxes, right, I'm now really going to try and show that number. I bought 4 Hounds at just below 25 million, and I bought also Zvepel at 41 million, just to give you guys that perspective. It's part, I'm now regularly making trips to Jita to try and buy minerals, to get some BPCs and things like that. And when I see or think I see opportunities, I should say, I do try to incorporate a little bit of trading. And so last EVE talk, it looked quite kind of interesting. Unfortunately, you could say demand continues to dry up, but let's keep in mind this means that right now we're on this violent downswing towards 25 million. That is going to have a sudden stop. So right now you can outdo my buy order pretty easily. Below 25 million, close to 20 million would be golden, but it could be that tomorrow it's already over, and the day after that, it could be impossible to grab these for less than 25 million. So maybe I've been a little bit early, but I'm very happy looking at this chart and looking what's happening in Tech2Ships in general to have bought a couple hounds below 25 million. Even if I sell now, it's almost 30 million. You're already looking positive by a little bit. And then the question is, can we materialize spikes? That's kind of what I'm hoping for and what we'll keep an eye on, of course. Then we've got the Ikitursa, all right, bit of pressure, but 800 million, still super expensive, of course. 815 for the sellers, 758 for the buyers. The Ishtar is able to stay at this high price of almost 250 million ISK, 247 for the sellers, 230 for the buyers. Definitely good for producers and sellers, not so much for people that are looking for buy opportunities. Then the Manticore, very nice if you're looking for another sell opportunity. About a month ago you could have bought these for less than 25 million, currently selling for 38 and buyers forced up to 30 million as well. Caldari, expensive, volatile. The real question is, right, just like with the Basilisk here, for instance, on a pullback, how low can the Manticore go? Can it go again, touch 25 million, or is below 30 million actually gonna be that new bottom range? That's really difficult to say at the moment. Then we've got the Munin that is still slowly making step by step higher prices. So also lacking a little bit in volatility, I would say, lacking in volumes as well. But right now, nice recovery to 80 million almost for the sellers, to 48 for the buyers. And yeah, 2 months ago, you could have bought this well below 200 million, super easy. So a slower trade than what I'm used to. Right? I prefer to see these types of charts for Tech2Ships, but definitely a very nice upswing right here on, well, increased costs. Then we've got the Nemesis that is now in that pullback here again. Very interesting to me, right? We reached 30 million at a high point. We went below 22.5 million on the chart for the trigger. And now at 25 million, are we stalling here? 26 million for the sellers, 22.5 for the buyers. The chart is already showing a 25 million average and hesitation in the last couple of days. So yeah, in all likeliness, we're just too late here again, just like with the Basilisk. I think maybe, let's see, 89, 71. Well, you're always going to be competing with this one. But basically, this buy order right here, you'd have to compete with that. And considering we're starting to go back up on the averages, it's just not gonna trigger. You're gonna have to be a lot more aggressive, go to the 23, 24 million to grab a Nemesis below 25 million. And this is really what I'm looking at the moment in the Tech2Ship market. What are those new pullback bottoms? Because before this, it was decently easy, below 20 million, here, no brainer. Below 22.5 million, here as well, here again. Yeah, that's doable, that's notable, but the chart is in all likeliness not going to hit those lows anymore, and so we have to find that new price point where you can invest, and you're like 99% sure that you're gonna get a positive return with just a little bit of patience. Then we've got the Oneros continuing a slow climb up as well, stabilizing at 223 for the sellers. Like, not a lot of ships available, 198 for the buyers. So this one has become a lot more expensive, and here this was a tradable period, completely unexpected and out of the blue. On Nero's always pretty low volumes, and at just this steady decline down to 160, 150 range. And then all of a sudden volatility came back, and now the last couple of months have basically been that steady rise up to that high point, 210, very expensive considering where it was the last couple of years. The Panther, right, the battleship, keeping a look here at general. This is my read on that. I may be completely wrong. There's bound to be speculation in all of this as well, but I'm trying to use this a little bit as a gauge for production costs, and yeah, managed to make its way back to 125 billion, which is the highest range in before the industry changes, you could say. And now, what is it, the Marauder change? Maybe I should add Marauders to the section. Honestly, it could be interesting. But yeah, back up to 1.4, and we never broke down to like a 1.1 or something like that. So to me, this is an indication at 1.4 billion almost for the sellers and buyers forced to 1.1125 billion, that production costs are just more expensive for Tech 2 at the moment. Then the Purifier climbing back up to 35 million. Amar, unfortunately, again, that Amar story is, it's more steady, it's less speculative, it's less bouncy. And so you have this, basically, if you look at this 20-day moving average, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 month increase in price from well below 25 million, where we were for a prolonged period of time, and currently selling at 35 million. But this is not one where, all right, we're pulling back, try to snag those cheap ones on an overreaction from producers or sellers. This is just not working here, right? You need that patience and to spot those bottoms and to understand the fundamentals, and all of this is, yeah, the increased price range for the materials. Scimitar flat, at, well, the high end of its range here again. 240 million for the sellers, 200 million for the buyers. That's a decent margin. So honestly, right here, I would wait for the pattern. Can we get a little bit of oversupply? Can we push buyers substantially below 200 million? Let's say, yeah, it's gonna be tricky, right? Look at how much attention there is on this already. But buy below 200 million, that would be great. But will it happen again? Difficult to say. Then we've got the Widow, again, using that a little bit as a gauge for production costs. And yeah, look at this first part of the chart, never above 1.25 billion. Then Marauder change, industry announcement, all of that stuff start to drive the price up here. Went to 1.75 billion. So this is definitely some speculation as well. But our pullbacks never break back down to that 1 billion range. 1.7 billion for the sellers, 1.6 billion for the buyers. Part of this is a rush into battleships and things like that, but part of it is also the production costs, in my opinion. Then we've got the Zealot, another Amar chart, right? 3 months from 180 to 244 million. Slow and steady, you know, those tend to win the race as well. They're definitely very nice returns if you bought here in March or in December at the low points. But yeah, you don't have as many opportunities as like here with the Cerberus, as here with the Hound and stuff like that. So the Tech 2 market at the moment, you can see here I'm trying from time to time, but it's gonna be difficult because I do think that those bottoms, those price points for buying are changing at the moment. Next up, we've got the Tech 3 ships coming in at 5120. Like that, and as always we start with the destroyers, and here is the Confessor. So this is not good news for my gamble, but I bought a single Zwepel. I definitely did not want to go all in or anything like that on this one just yet. I'm not feeling super confident, but I think it's okay. So here's the Confessor pulling back well below 50 million at 47 for the sellers and 43 for the buyers. Supply wise 35, 37, 12. I'm not worried, right? Last 24 hours, 4 sell orders. I'm not too worried. This should stop declining now, and then the question is what will happen next, of course. Then we've got the Hecate that was expensive and is still able to try to stay above 50 million, but is coming back down just below 50 for the sellers, 42 for the buyers. While we're seeing full front page and a little bit more in the last 24 hours, 18, 15, 20. It's okay for the one that was above 50 million and to drive this price back towards that normal 47-ish range. And then we've got the Jackdaw that's also back just below 50 million, 49 for the sellers, 44 for the buyers, and supply wise full page again. 40-40, that's a little bit much, but then most of these are below 10, so this still feels like it's all right. We can definitely settle at that 48-49 million range for these, I'd say, most popular ones at the moment. And then what I'm hoping is, you just saw Jackdaw last 24 hours full page, Hecate last 24 hours full page, that this is going to start to draw on the potential for this Zwepel. And we do have a slight pull up in price towards 45. 46 million now for the sellers and 40 million for the buyers, but it's not there yet to bring us at that 48 million range together with the others. So I made a purchase 41 million. A single one, right? Sorry if you would have loved to see some more, speculative moves on my end, but I tend to be super careful. But I bought 41 million, including taxes. So even if I sell now at 46 million, and just this slight gain here is already looking pretty good, right? These are, to me, these do feel like pretty certain trades. But what I'm kind of hoping for, just like with the Hound, is that there is going to be something, maybe Nosek, who knows, an event, something like that, that is going to drive the price up, maybe of the Jackdaw, maybe of the Hecate. Maybe I should try to manipulate a little bit and make a Jackdaw video or something like that, where all of a sudden we push back up above 50 million. It requires a lot of demand to fill. The others are going to respond a little bit in kind, and then that should help really this vehicle to finally make a push towards 50 as well. Buy at 41, sell at 50. That would be the dream, and I think it could happen. It could also not materialize. We've been very stable over the last couple of months, but buying his vehicle 41 million, including taxes, and you can do that now again as well, right? Biggest buyer is at 40 million, so that to me feels like, it could become a good trade with a little bit of patience and a little bit of luck. And then we've got the cruisers, where, well, I really don't feel like gambling just yet. Here is the Legion, just again bouncing on that 180 mark, 177 for the sellers, 168 for the buyers. So I'm really not spotting a real buy opportunity here. Here is the Loki, a bit of volatility, but at the high end here as well. 194 for the sellers, 173 for the buyers. Not exactly a place I want to jump in. Here is the Proteus, then went to 200 million, went back below 180, is back at 180 for the sellers, 165 for the buyers. Yeah, do I want to start a move here? Nope. And then the Tengu, still very expensive as well, 195 for the sellers, 177 for the buyers. On this chart, to me, this is like produce, sell, you're bound to have decent margins, but jumping in to try and buy cheap and sell for a high price, it's just not really in the books. So that's the tech tree market. So these are my trades. Bought a Hound below 25, including taxes. Bought a vehicle 41 million, including taxes, and I'll keep you guys up to date, of course, on that as well. After that, we have the extra products, and a bit of a request. In fact, someone said I should start to move to make gas materials a part of the regular segment. Now you can see we're almost at an hour. This is going to take a little bit of time. This is why at the moment that's not really on the books, but yeah, gas cloud materials coming in at 56.15. And the reasoning is quite sound, right? These have become a part of the regular production cycle for bigger ships. So there's bound to be some moves here. Now we're going to start with booster gas clouds, and I kind of think that CCP is going to have to change that name, because now this is also used in like a Neuralink stabilizer, not just a booster reaction formula. But all right, here is the Amper Cytocerocin that has already stabilized after a bump here in March, April, just above 100,000 disc, 140 for the sellers and 120 for the first buyer, but most buyers below 100,000 disc. So this is really still something that I think is going to be pretty niche with opportunities, but there is of course risk involved, because mining for gas, you're not going to do that in HiSec too much. Amber Mycocerocin, here is a very clear winner of the industry patch. Used to be, what's this price range here, 8,000 ISK, is currently selling for 38,000, buyers coming in at 37,000. Bit of speculation potentially here as well, quite volatile, but look at the volume. So this is the new demand, starts second half of April. This is the patch. We need this stuff for our bigger ships, and so demand is up, and so are the prices. Azure Cytocerocin, all right, one that had a little bit of a speculative bubble up to 150, but is at the moment actually cheap. 42,000 for the sellers, 30,000 for the buyers. Couple big volume spikes, probably some dumping, and that is it. So it's not uniform across the board. Azure though, here actually just on announcement, it seems, massive boom on a big purchase from, man, what is this price? 2,600 disc, currently going for 20,000 discs. So this is definitely like a 10x a very big valorization on that new demand that has really also started to show up here second part of April and now throughout May. So this is that industry. Yeah, booster gas clouds, not necessarily the right name anymore. Celadon, man, these names, I mean, I'm just gonna go, maybe just use the first part or something like that. You can view on the chart exactly what I'm looking at, but yeah, Celadon, cytocerazine going for above 200,000 ISK, double the price it was a month ago. Volume-wise, we're not spotting that much of a difference. 230 to 250 for the sellers, 148 for the buyers, very big margin, but a super pronounced one-year high point. Celadon, Mycoceracin, look at the volumes, lovely. This should be able to keep that price, right? 58,000 for the sellers, 44 for the buyers on this increased demand. Definitely super good. Golden, not so much in the volumes, but the price has doubled as well. So that seems to be the pattern, right? Some of them, right, required in huge amounts compared to before, and so those prices, what are we talking about here, from 10,000 discs to 50,000 discs, 5 times the price all of a sudden. Definitely a massive increase in volumes. There's others that don't have that big of a volume but are just more expensive because they are needed, probably in lower amounts. But we get some huge winners in this, definitely, like here, Golden, Mycoceracin. So Mycoceracin does seem to be one of those. Can I see what it's used for? Axiomatic Neuralink Enhancer Reaction Formula Synth Crash Booster. So it's not that one, it's the axiomatic stuff. And so this one again, volume wise, just, you know, completely new demand that has been created by CCP. And so we start the price well below 10,000 ISK and currently going for 33,000 ISK. Lime stuff, yeah, just a nice move up, but again the volumes aren't that sustained. Mycoceracin, there's the volumes and there is the price from, let's take a bottom here, 7k, an average one, 18k, and currently 50,000 ISK for most, 54,000 for most sellers. Malachite, cytoceracin, expensive, but the volumes aren't there. And then Mycoceracin, again, here are the sustained volumes. Not as big of a gain, but it's definitely there. And then we get the vermilion stuff, and this is more speculative, right? Cytoceracin, I would say more speculative, probably harder to get, less needed, but at the right time. You can now sell this for 200,000 ISK, so that's a very nice 4 times increase on not even that much of volume. And then Mycoceracin has the new volumes and thus has that newer trade range, probably won't pull back below that 33,000 range at the moment. Viridian stuff, actually a little bit more normal. And then this one, here's the volumes again, did pull back towards 25k, but overall, yeah, gas, that has become a lot more expensive and a lot more interesting to go and go after. Next up, we'll take a quick look at the fullerenes as well here, since it is a gas product. So here is fullerite C28, currently going for 7.5. 10,000 for the sellers, 7.3 for the buyers. Couple of booms up to 10k, but overall I'd say it's expensive at the moment. C32 is inexpensive at the moment, just recovering from a boom up to 22,000 and now back down to 14k for the sellers. 320 around average, 50 expensive. I'm gonna go through these a little bit more quickly. C540 around average, and the C60. If we spot anything really special, like this is definitely interesting. I think what we've got here is a little bit of speculation on the announcement. A very big buy that drove the price up to 7,500. We're still recovering from that, but the increased volumes, it's a little bit. So is this needed in something? Let's see. Maybe, yeah, some of these reaction formulas, but to me it doesn't feel like the fullerenes are seeing that big in gains. A slight increase in volumes, but overall, again, here is another speculation on the C70 that, I mean, we're still above the average price, but not by that much. And then the C72, higher volumes, but the price 7.5 is doable. And C84 just recovering already as well from another boost up to almost 10,000 ISK. So the biggest moves are actually in the booster gas clouds, and some of them really have those new volumes that are bound to stay. The fullerenes, overall above average, but basically a little bit over speculated clearly early April overall. And yeah, that's the gas clouds as well, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. As always, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you all next time.